So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the kind offer to present to you today. As you've heard, my background is in law enforcement. I left the law enforcement arena about 18 months ago as the Assistant Director of Police at Interpol, where I specifically ran the illicit trade program. Interpol, for you that don't know, is the governing police body for 190 national police forces around the world. They deal with all types of crime, as you'd expect. Human trafficking, drugs, auto crime, firearms, missing persons, etc. And I was specifically in charge with the department that dealt with illicit trade and smuggling and everything that meant, and particularly the organised crime elements that were engaged in that activity. It's the first time I've been here in Jamaica, and I've been very lucky to have experienced some of the history. I was happy to see Lord Nelson was here before me around 1700, about a few miles up the road, a star of mine, a hero of mine, and have of course been impressed by the diversity of your heritage and your warmth and of course your culture. And these things come from culture, and your national identity comes from, of course, your own innovation and your own experiences. This comes from your music, from your art, from your people, from your soul, and that is what intellectual property is all about. It's protecting the innovations, protecting inventions, protecting the developments of culture. I'm going to share with you during my words what it is that drives me to have spent nearly half my working life fighting this particular crime. But before I do that, let's revisit why we're here, and let me, if I may, provide some important comments on the importance of working in partnerships. And I will talk through my words, I will keep coming back to this point, the need to come and work in partnerships. The partnerships between the public sector, police, customs, taxation authorities, food drugs administration, market inspectors, etc., with the private sector. And even today, I had a little smile just at the end of Mr. Steele's conversations. There was some question from the lady asking about product identification. This is a typical example of what happens the world over, because law enforcement agencies need to turn to the private sector to get this type of information. The private sector are those that know most about the threats that is happening to them. And with the communication being cemented in a trusted way, between the private sector and the law enforcement, then we have an opportunity for hopefully greater success in fighting in this area. So it was Albert Einstein who commented, if I was given 1 hour to save the planet, I would spend 59 minutes defining the problem and then 1 minute to resolve it. And really the advice from Mr. Einstein is very clear, and it applies to us sitting in the room today. We must rigorously identify and define the scope of the challenge that we're facing in order that our initiatives are strategically aligned to fight against it. So intellectual property and trademark violation, the smuggling of excisable goods, whether that's alcohol, whether that's fuel, whether that is tobacco, the exploitation of environmentally protected species, the theft of cultural artifacts. In fact, illicit trade in its entirety brings with it, as I said, theft of creation, creativity, and innovation. And that impacts on inward investment, it impacts on growth, as we've heard, science, education, culture, and your heritage. I don't know if it's a good thing, but in the 20 years I've been working in this area, I've witnessed how this crime kills people every day. I've witnessed how this crime impacts on the health of society. I've seen how this crime threatens citizen safety. I've seen how it feeds transnational organised crime groups. I've witnessed how it finances subversive groups who are driven by their own political means. And in short, this is a crime that robs countries of their dignity, it robs countries of their destiny, it's a growing blight, and it feeds individuals and entities who are working in the shadows of what is considered as normal business. I'm looking at a blank screen down there, but what we have here roughly, as you can see, is a global map of the impact and scope of illicit trade. And you'll see in the different sections at the bottom how different types of crime types are identified with the financial impacts around illicit trade. And we must talk about, as I mentioned before, an important word for trust, the trust in any partnerships that must exist between both public and private associations. That's okay, I'm all right. My friend, it's okay. I know these slides. So let's go through a little bit of what we talk about. Fake alcohol kills people every day. If you're lucky, you go blind. If you're unlucky, you will die. Toys, of course, tobacco, both fake and illicit. Sportswear, Nike, Hikey, Likey, Nike, Wikey, Adidas, Avidos, Avidis, Puma, Tuna, Fuma. It's all out there. There's one I like very much, I think it's punk. There's one with a little punk hairstyle, if you remember back in those days. This one, punk, yeah, showing my age. It's the scope of the threats. This is quite a good campaign, actually, because this was the sports industry coming together. Just don't do it, yeah, just do it, just don't do it. This was Nike, Adidas, and the others all coming together. Complete fake petrol station. This is in Eastern Europe. This has the markings of British Petroleum, but it's not a BP site. It's a complete fake petrol station. Condoms, guys, take care. Counterfeit condoms. Very, very dangerous. Imagine. This one is a syringe. This is a syringe that's been taken from a hospital, from the dustbins. It's been taken from the hospital. It's then repackaged as a genuine product and has then been sold back into the supply chain. So what you have, and I always think of this when I go to the dentist, you have particles of blood and hair on this. So this is criminals who are going into the dustbins to retrieve the product, to repackage it, make it look genuine, and to sell it back in the market. And this is what we have to deal with there. Electrical equipment, obviously. Genuine fake watches. So when you're trying to make a raid, this is a message to all police officers. You can't raid this one because it's a genuine fake. So you have no. It's a very honest trader telling us it's a genuine fake. This is a skincare product. This is a particular brand I won't mention in China, in a disused school where the water comes from the toilet. And they're making skincare product that I promise you is a world famous brand that you will be using for sure. And this is being imported and sent all around the world. The packaging looks genuine. Inside is absolute, it's horrid, it's terrible. Same here, this is shampoo. This is an illegal shampoo production factory in the Middle East region. So you see here the conditions of the production, you know, not at all what you'd expect from a genuine product. This is fake soap. Very interesting actually, fake soap. Each piece here is around, say, €2. I don't know what the exchange rate is, but for criminals with this fake soap, they can make so much money. I'll tell you what they do. They go in a suitcase, because I've seen the seizures, they will travel with a suitcase just packed with cakes of soap. Just soap. And the customs officer said to me, what's going on? Why are they coming through the customs with the soap? I said, it's very simple. What the guy is doing is he's buying the soap in a country, When he arrives in the country where he wants to sell the product, he will have a heat stamp, you know, a stamp, and the stamp will say, I don't know, Dove or whatever your favorite soap is. And with the heat stamp, he will stamp the name on top of the soap, so you have the emblem. Then you go to a printer, any printer, ask them to make up a box for you. Then you have a Dove soap. Inside inside you have a Dove soap, completely fake, and then I can make $3, $4, $5 US, whatever, for each one, just out of one suitcase. Easy, 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 easy. Low level, but easy. What's the next one? This is again a recycling. This is a factory in India where the criminals were going into, very, very ingenious. They were going into the dustbins and were recovering empty aerosol cans. And then you see the system they have here with the gas bottle. They have perfumed water, and they were then refilling the, there we have a better picture. You see some of the brands. They were refilling the aerosol, which they were then selling back into the communities. Very, very common in some parts of the world. Just the scope of the ingenuity of the problems that we face. What I didn't have, it's a shame, I wanted to show you, I've got some, on a more serious note, I have some slides of counterfeit pesticides, for example. Thank you. My last words. This is a crime that is shared by everybody. And I wanted to show you that video, which was part of a public media campaign that I was running before, and it still has some life in it. The campaign called Turn Back Crime. And as it said at the end, part of the messaging is not just to the officials that we have in the room here today, but it's also to the consumers, to society. And try to say to people, you have a choice what you do with your money. You can either give your money to this guy not this guy, but this guy, the criminal, who is funding other types of crime. You will give your money to this guy and it will come back and bite you. This guy will be trading in drugs, he'll be trading in harmful products, which you will then be investing, and that will come back and be reinvested in your society. Or you can give it to this guy and you go the legitimate route. And unless we can convince the consumers of this, or at least get part of their engagement, we will always have the problem where they see the cheap product and that's as far as they go. And in some societies, and I understand that's very much one of the problems in Jamaica also, the social economic levels of society will drive people towards the cheaper option all the time. And unless we can help get them to sometimes think a little bit about what they're doing, you will then just refunding this horrible cycle of organized crime, unfortunately. So this was part of one of the campaigns that we were using globally in about 90 countries around the world, Turn Back Crime, and it comes with lots of other materials as well, where we're trying to engage with society to say to them, please make an informed choice what you do with your money, because free isn't always the best option, trust me. So if I may, I'd like to recap on some of the things that was mentioned today, starting with Mr. Steele, who spoke about the loss of revenue to the country, and I was astounded by the figures. 50% of tobacco in Kingston is reported as illicit. 30% of tobacco across Jamaica is reported as illicit. And massive tax hikes, of course, are bringing with it the loss of revenue rather than what was perceived to be the increase in revenue. It's actually gone the opposite way. The Honourable Dr. Chang also spoke about in similar veins, and I wrote down his actual words, which I found very powerful, very powerful. Illicit trade is the driver of criminality in Jamaica, meaning guns, drugs, and everything else. And unless we deal with it effectively, we will never get the growth we deserve. Fantastic quote, and one I would take away and I'll use on other presentations, because he has hit the nail on the head, without a doubt. Assistant Commissioner Bailey talked in positive terms, encouraging terms. $1.5 billion worth of illicit products were seized, 50% of that being tobacco products. He talked about the task force, which is something I'll touch on as well, the importance of task force. He talked about the importance of public-private partnerships, excellent, and the need to raise awareness to the health and safety impacts, the links to corruption, and the links to the organised crime enterprises that he talks about. And these are enterprises where the manufacturing is in one country, where the distribution is another country, where the website that is promoting the illicit product is another country, where the money goes into a bank account in another country, and where the criminal is sitting in the 5th or 6th country down the road. How can any one enforcement agency or one country deal with this? Huge challenge. But by coming together, maybe we can make that impact. Kirk Benjamin talked about the upgrading of scanners to complement their SOP systems, the electronic manifests, removing human intervention, the implementation of better quality CCTVs. He described the MOUs that they signed. He talked about the importance of wearing body cameras, which I thought was very, very interesting, both for the protection of the customs officers and also to review what had happened in the past. And he talked about the improvisation of new tools. Victor then presented on the scope of illicit trade, a $460 billion business in 2016. Jamaica's estimate of around $5 billion. Is he still here? Is Victor, are you here? You said you were on a buccaneer duty. I immediately thought this is something to do with pirates, no? I thought the police officer says, I'm on buccaneer duty, so afterwards you can explain to me what the buccaneer duty means. I'm very intrigued. But I broke down the things that Victor spoke about are exactly key to the elements that is happening in many, many other parts of the world today. He talked about the low risk, high reward for this crime. My experience, former armed robbers, former drugs dealers, moving away from that. There were guys that used to run across the pavement with balaclavas and shotguns. to steal a handbag, a suitcase from a security van with £500,000. What? What do I want to do that for? I don't need to do that anymore. I tell you what I do. I set up a website. I import my product from this country. I distribute it to that country, all from the comfort of my swimming pool, and people will buy. People will buy my product. What's my product? It could be fake cancer medicine. It could be fake baby food. It could be fake contact lenses. It could be fake auto parts, brake pads that don't work, airbags that don't work, windscreens that smash when they get hot. I don't care. It could be fake cigarettes. It could be illicit cigarettes that will be impregnated with dangerous chemicals, will be impregnated with bacteria. I don't care. I'm sitting by my pool and I'm making the money. Doesn't matter to me. People may die from this, but I don't care. Why? Because if I'm caught, what's going to happen to me? Nothing. We heard it today. Containers worth billions, millions. Guy goes to court because of the system. No criticism, please. Because of the system, the sentence is minimal. Which is why I've seen criminals moving tobacco, for example, fake tobacco. They'll move 5, 6, 7 containers. 3 get seized. Not a problem. It's a business risk. It's a business risk that I don't care about because I've got my other ones through. The other ones that have gone through have offset the cost against me. Not a problem. And this is how sophisticated the criminals are. The organised crime gangs will put, someone spoke about GPS this morning. The organised crime gangs will put GPS systems inside the containers. They will move the containers and they'll be moving their containers through 3, 4, 5 different countries. We'll come back to the part played by free trade zones in a minute. They'll move and they will disguise the direction that these containers have gone until they arrive at the destination where they want them to be actually distributed, the final destination. If the police or the customs now move that container from the normal channels and they put it on another part of the port, these guys, the criminals, they already know this. They know now that because they've put the electronic tracking systems, they know, okay, our container's been moved. It's not now moving out of the free trade zone. It's been kept. Not only that, they then have devices on these electronic equipment that have little movement sensors. They know that the doors have been opened. That container is now dead. And you can sit and watch and wait and do surveillance for weeks on end. That container's dead. No one's moving it. No one's going to touch that container again. This is what we're fighting against. The criminals, this is what we're fighting against. It's the technology that they are employing, are the same technology that, of course, the law enforcement agencies maybe do or don't use. That's the truth of it. And they are highly, highly sophisticated. That container's dead. The other 5 or 6, we'll move them out of this port because now that port is now a dangerous port for me. I'm going to move it to the next port, to the next country along. And they'll just keep changing that routing until they get it in. And they will always use those countries where the weakness in the ports is the easiest. And that is why in those countries you need to step up, otherwise you become overwhelmed with illegal. Illegal in transit terms, and then apart from transit, the diversion from into your own countries. That's what comes from this. Low risk, high reward. Victor spoke about free trade zones, he spoke about internet, he spoke about the links with corruption, he spoke about the legislative weaknesses, the social acceptability of this crime, which is, I showed you the videos and some of the measures I've seen working in other countries having sustained campaigns to educate society. I'm glad to hear him say this is not a victimless crime. And he talked particularly about enforcement cooperation. You mentioned Barbados, you mentioned Suriname, you mentioned cooperations with Trinidad, which is exactly how it should be across the region. I was concerned to hear, if I heard it correctly, that storage facility was a hindrance to making more seizures. Because whatever happens, guys, that can't be allowed. If the law enforcement agencies can't seize product because they can't store it, you're going to have to find a way around this. What I've seen work in other countries is that the private sector have invested in empty containers. You put those empty containers inside a police car pound. You must have car pounds for your seizures. So in some sort of secure unit, the containers go into the pounds and then the product is stored inside the containers and locked. I don't know if that would work, but it works in other countries. Up until some point is where it's destroyed. You have the big public destruction days and you destroy it. It works. Then he spoke about Mr. Ching and Mrs. Yang. They used to sell the rice, and now they're hiding behind legitimate business. Exactly the same in all parts of the world, so really spot on. Then, if I may, I remind you of what John said. The video question, who is Mr. X at the end of the video? Remember, we had this fantastic video showing all the players that were part of this particular crime. 29% of illicit trade in the Americas is illegal. 11% of illicit trade in tobacco globally is illegal, which, if that was a business, would be the third largest in the world, valued at billions in lost revenue. And again, John spoke about the importance of free trade zones. So, ladies and gentlemen, the physical environment, it's clear to all of us from what we've heard today that these criminal entities are globally engaged in commercial scale illicit trade, conducting their operations with no concern for the economic competitiveness of your own legitimate business, or your own livelihoods, or your own opportunities for your creative communities. Innovation and creative industries and the private sector generally are supporting millions of jobs, protecting the efforts of businesses of all sizes. The illicit trade is hurting your commerce, your innovators, your business, and it's the same the world over. If it's left unchecked, the unlawful exploitation will remain a risk, not just only hampering your ingenuity and but your opportunities for economic and employment growth. Opportunities for economic and employment growth. So it's easy to sit there and say, well, what's that really mean in real words? How does that happen? So let me share with you an experience, if I may, in one country that I won't say the name of, but it's very close to Greece. In fact, it might be Greece, but I won't say which country. So the Greek people are very, very liberal. And I'll give you an example of what happened to their country in relation to the music industry, if I may. They were inundated with illegal immigrants, and also people who had been trafficked. And these people have been trafficked and put inside inside the music industry, distributing fake CDs. Whenever the police tried, these CDs were sold by traders with rucksacks walking around the beaches. You know, you see them everywhere. They're selling all sorts of stuff from their rucksacks. And whenever the police tried to do something against these informal traders, the people in the cafeterias and the restaurants or on the beaches, they used to complain. Say, leave this guy alone. He's a poor guy. Leave him alone. This is the wrong person. Why are you attacking this guy? You shouldn't be touching him. And it became quite confrontational between the people, the society, and the law enforcement community. So they approached me and asked if there was anything we could do. So sure. So we turn up in Greece working with the investigation departments, and I started to analyse the fake CDs that were being used. And I discovered a particular brand of CD. It was called Prinko. So then it was simple, just go around, looking around the shops, go on the internet and find where can I buy the cheapest CDs, the blank CDs, where can I buy them? And I found one or two shops. I put my team outside the shops. And the next day we have cars arriving and we see Nigerians in big flash cars coming out and taking out the blank CDs, putting them in the boot of the car. We follow the Nigerians and we follow these boxes into different addresses, blocks of flats, different addresses. Interesting. This is obviously where the production is happening. We identify about 12 of these addresses.